Hi, everybody. This is Jimmy Lee Combs. I'm the writer, director, and producer of Terror Tales, a horror anthology that is my love letter to Creepshow. Be sure to check out the 13th Wolf and make sure you give a good howl. I know,
Hey
right?
everybody, it's the 13th Wolfman, and you know what? You know who I have with me today? I have one of the stars and the writer, producer, director for Terror Tales, Johnanthan Teirsten, and Jimmy. I want to say Combs, but is it
Yeah, that's
Comb?
correct. Yeah, you got it, my man. Thank you.
Okay, just you know,
A lot of people
this
say
was
Coombs. Coombs, I get a lot, but yeah, Combs, you got it. You nailed it.
I thought you said
this
Bruce.
is an
Bruce will
interesting
get that.
movie. This really was. I mean, it's and I've seen a lot of them lately. A lot of movies are doing the anthology horror thing. And this is another one, and you got three really cool stories. My favorite has to be the video store one.
Oh, thank you.
I'm,
Yeah, yeah.
and
He's just
that's
saying
just
that because I'm here.
I know, right? Pay him good money.
no, I'm saying that because I lived in that decade. That was my teenage to young adult years, and when that whole thing was going on, that's me. I was hanging out at a place called opening night video.
Nice.
Yeah,
You
we
remember
So
the
had a
name?
place
Yeah,
called
man.
New Video.
new video. Yeah. And I'm one of those people that's kind of a nuisance when it comes to this because I'm looking at the date. It says February '84, and I'm going just a second. It says February '84 here, but that movie, Private Tutor, that came out in like '83, and then there's another one that they show a little bit later. I'm like, that movie came out like '85. Oh, Transylvania 65000 came out in
Yeah.
'85. You know,
Well, you mentioned that. I was very mindful of those details, and that poster I got from an actual video store. They held onto it when they were going out of business, and so I put it up for decoration. And I figured, it'd be kind of a prop in there to establish the '80s, but not necessarily that it was 1984. I never really like clearly established what year it was in the
right.
'80s, so that I could have a little more wiggle room. Technically, I always wrote it as like 1987, but I didn't want to allude to it so much for like the reasons you were saying because fans would be able to point that out. And every scene I took such care into making sure it was authentically 80s because it would be picked out and little things in the video store and things like that. So, um, but no, I'd always thought about that though. That's interesting you picked that out. I wonder if like fans would look at that and think that was like to establish the year 1984 in the segment, but it was just kind of to represent an older poster in the video store. But it would have made more sense if I like
No,
thought
no.
that was.
I'm also looking at all the video tape covers to see to see. I'm like, okay, which one? Oh, that one. Just try to establish in the back of my head what year supposedly. What's the latest year
Right.
it could be. You know.
Well, and
And
it's
then you got
funny
Jonathan and
stuff because a lot of videos like I was all checking all those boxes. I was checking the dates, and some of them would be like 1992, but it was an 80s film, but it would have the reissue cover
reissue.
art. So
Yeah.
like I was very careful like not to have that slip in the background, some like reissued box art
Well,
or something.
and Jimmy
And
knows I'm a real pain in the ass when it comes to storyboard. So I
well,
was I am a pain in the ass when it comes to storyboard and continuity. So I was scoping all of those videos.
oh, yeah, yeah, I'm sure you were probably checking
Hey,
it too, like, well, blah, blah,
Every
that, that
single
belongs.
one.
What is
I'm making sure that nothing was out of context because
thank God,
and
because
there was
I mean
nothing.
there are times you'll watch a movie and it's like, dude, what was it? The Final Girls,
hmm,
right?
I saw that
There's a
one, yeah.
scene. The movie takes place in like 1986, but there's a song in it from 1990, and I'm like, we have the internet now.
It
How
happens all
hard
the
is
time.
it? So,
That's a
Jonathan,
good.
how'd you get involved with this, man?
Jimmy, contact.
Jimmy just reached out to you and said,
Well,
"Hey, come on board."
we both lived in Colorado. Although by the time I shot, I no longer lived in Colorado.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's what was ironic. I knew JT was from Fort Collins here, and I'm like, that's perfect. He's in state where we're going to be filming. I got to reach out to him. And then when I did, I think I could be wrong, JT, but I think it was a matter of months that I had just missed JT because he had moved out to LA. And I was like, I just miss you. But anyway, he was gracious enough to fly out here and do his scenes.
It was
That's
just, and then he got my friend Doug Groovy Newville involved, and
Yeah, that was a blast having him.
yeah, and Ron Crawford, and just all these really great people who we could work with. And,
and a former co-star of yours,
with Lorene, and that
Yeah.
was like, woo-woo.
and a former co-star of yours who you don't have any scenes with because she's in a different segment.
Yeah, that's like been our rule apparently since my reemergence. Because when we did The Perfect House, I wasn't in any scenes with her either. Yeah, so that still has not happened. Which is
I think there was one other. Wasn't there one other film too? You and Felissa.
Reservoir, Blood Reservoir. We're not in that either at any point together.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I think like 3 of them now that you guys are in the same movie but not in the same scene.
Yeah, it hasn't happened yet.
That'd be cool to get you guys in the same scene again for something.
Yeah, well, I mean, if it happens, I think there'll be sparks will fly.
This movie does have like a really cool cast. I mean, you got Jan Birch.
He's amazing.
You got, huh?
He's amazing.
Oh yeah, he is. Lynn Lowry, Felissa, Johnanthan. I mean, just these names that you just kept as the credits roll at the very beginning of it. You're just kind of like, wow, you're in for a ride when this movie starts. You know it.
Literally, and that's part of the fun of it. For horror fans who are just like kind of coming into the film and don't know a whole lot about it, they're going to be pleasantly surprised to be like, oh, I know that name, or I know Ari Lemon. It's the first Jason Voorhees, or I think the real treat for a lot of horror fans is, she didn't do like a lot of horror films, but she was associated with the first Ghostbusters, and that's Jennifer Runyon, and
Yep.
she had an opening scene with Bill Murray.
Oh my God, was she hot?
Yeah, exactly. It's a girl in that, and she has a brief cameo in the Epidemic segment, so it'll be fun to see which fans spot her where she's at.
Yeah, no, it's I really did. I like the way this movie opened. It's just kind of like this vast desert wasteland looking, type place. It starts out like you would see a 1970s movie start out. It has that cinescope to it.
Exactly. I wanted to go for that vibe to establish a retro feel from the beginning, and even kind of had that pale yellow kind of font that you would see like in a 70s opening credit.
Like Billy Jack.
Yeah. Like Billy Jack. Damn, you are awesome, JT. You're on it, man. Yeah, and I'm glad you observed that too.
I'm a cinephile, so I'm a weirdo.
Yeah, I love it. And I love you mentioned Billy Jack, because I'm a huge fan of him, that movie. But anyways, yeah, so it was very, very intentional. A lot of stuff was very intentional. Yes.
Yeah, it just Billy Jack, great movie. Tom Laughlin did a great job writing and directing it.
There's a certain, I guess, what I would add to that is there's a certain uneasiness that Jimmy was shooting for, and that's what you feel in the first scene is just that uneasiness. And I always like movies like that, Cool Hand Luke did that too,
Cool.
Yeah.
But that you don't. It's like, well, I don't know what's happening here. It's not a movie for everybody. It's not. Well, it's not the Bud Light versus the, craft brew. But I think it will touch some people because there's a lot of talent in it and a lot of passion that Jimmy did. So.
Thank you, man. And yeah, I mean, to that opening, I wanted to establish it quick that the audience is on this ride right there with the husband, and they're in it for the long haul, and how the driver's subjecting Michael to these stories, the audience is getting subjected to them at the same time, and the nuttiness that follows and the craziness.
And Chris Showerman was great.
Oh yeah, he owned that performance. He added so much of his own take and his dialogue to that character that
he kept switching accents.
It was great for it.
Oh yeah,
it's fun. If you're a director or casting director and you kind of have a knack, for finding talent, like with Christopher, he had done a film called Ladybug, and I'd watched for the trailer to that film, and he plays this psychopath on this boat, kind of like the end of Cape Fear kind of style, and he's stalking this woman on the boat, and he turns all crazy on her. So I saw him do a crazy performance, and I'm like, he can pull off psychotic. Lynn Lowry, she did this 11-minute, I think it's called While the Town Was Sleeping, this 11-minute piece that she filmed, and she's reading this story, but she's performing it, and you see this whole range of emotions that she plays, and I'm like, oh my god, she could totally play a mom crazy with a Munchausen by proxy disorder, you know. So that was conscious too with the casting of everybody, even you, JT. Like everybody, I wanted to make sure and watch their work and being a fan of it to make sure they could pull off roles and do it and not just throw them in a role just to say, hey, we got so and so, we got so and so, and then they fall flat. And it's been praised. The performance has been praised for that. So everybody did a phenomenal job. Yeah.
So so Jimmy, you also you wrote this.
Yes.
Of the three stories you had to write, which was the hardest one to come up with? I mean, as far as you know. Well.
Yeah. So the hardest I would say is definitely Epidemic, because I knew hands down what I wanted to do for the wraparound by proxy and radical video, and I wanted a third tell, and I wasn't sure what the hell it should be, and I started asking a buddy of mine, and he was like, "Well, what scared you the most?" And I told him, "Well, possession stuff. That's always freaked the hell out of me, like The Exorcist and whatnot." And he's like, "There you go, write a possession segment." And so that kind of got the ball rolling on that, and then I started thinking, well, how can I make this a little bit different than other possession films that have been done 100 times over? And I think one of the more unique aspects of it is the whole Satan jumping bodies and possessing different people. It starts small, but then it becomes an epidemic and goes worldwide, like we showed with like the Japan geisha scene, and then the pastor having to save his daughter from being possessed. So there was definitely some cliche moments in it that I don't think you can get away from in a possession film. But that one was a little bit of a struggle because I was really hard on myself to try and do something different with the possession tell that's been done so much. Yeah.
I've got to say the birth of Yawn has got to be one of my favorite scenes. I don't know how else to describe it other than the birth of Yawn.
Cool. And with that, if you're making films over the years and you're doing special effects, there's a short film I did called Evil Lurks in Innocence. You can find it on YouTube. And there's a shot in that where at the end of it, Satan bursts right through the possessed girl in this. And I don't know why that just came to me then to do that. We pulled it off really effectively. And I thought, how cool would it be for Satan's introduction to this, that we throw the audience for a curveball and they see, the nun possessed and turns and out pops Yawn from her stomach and he crawls out of there. It's a very cool birth of Satan kind of thing inside of a nut, really twisted, and it's gone over really well. But it kind of was inspired from a project in the past, knowing that we could pull it off and do it. And this was a lot harder to do, but we were able to do it.
So Johnanthan, did you find it very hard getting into your character for this movie?
There were parts of it that were confusing for me because I'd done a serial killer in The Perfect House, and I wanted to figure out what Gregory Tate's
motivation,
just everything is just who he was, which is why I told Jimmy that he has a stammer or stutter, whatever you want to call it, and he just I remember when I was doing that first scene with the girl in the chair, I felt so vulnerable, not like I did when I did Perfect House. It was totally different because I think Gregory Tate is totally under the influence of his mother, and so that's what I went with. Whether it reads, I don't know, but
it totally reads, man. And I'll add to that. The stuttering was great because as we kind of established, and and as Lorene's telling the audience as well, your backstory, how you were, made fun of in school and never had, any luck with the girls and all these things. It really comes full circle when they see how like socially awkward you are, and how, and even with the girl you are in the video store.
Oh, that first scene. Yeah.
Yeah, and then we see your stutter, and just kind of how just off you are around this, this girl. And and then when we get to the backstory behind that Lorene tells, you definitely get that vibe, and things unfold little by little.
Yeah.
So it was fun, man. I wrote the breadcrumbs I feel for the character, but I mean you filled so much of it in, like just like Christopher did, and adding your own flavor to it, and I love that. I love seeing that, and with giving actors roles and stuff, I like them to have that freedom with their character.
Lorene and I met one day and ad-libbed something.
Yeah, and you two together in that scene, it gave me goosebumps. The scene where, there's the reveal. I don't want to spoil too much, but Johnanthan and Lorene improv this scene. I had no idea what they were gonna do. I was just rolling, and they did it, and I'm like, oh my god, that took the twistedness and introduced a new concept and element, a dynamic, I should say, between these two characters that I didn't quite go there in my twisted mind, but these two did, and it took it to the next level. The mother son relationship. Let's just say that.
I think I know what scene you're talking about.
Yeah, exactly.
It raises some.
It does, and what's good at a moment like that is it speaks volumes to the audience, because just by that moment they can be like, okay, this is fucked up on a lot of levels.
So that's how it is in their house.
Really? Yeah. Oh my god. And she was.
I got another question. Another question for you, Johnanthan. Do you ever? I mean, I don't know what your method of acting is. If you're a method actor, if but do you ever find it hard to get? I mean, once you get deep into a character and you're there, do you find it hard?
That's the hardest part.
Sorry.
Is getting out character afterwards. I find that I've never been some acting friends that I know are really good at that. I struggle with it. It's easy to get into the character.
I've always wondered.
Because I think that and this is just my own personal philosophy, is that we're all playing characters all day, every day. We all have multiple personalities. When somebody gives you carte blanche to just really experiment with something truly dark, it's really fun. and you don't want to come back from it, because they have complete autonomy, So yeah, for me, it's not about getting into the character that's hard. It's about getting out.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I've heard some actors, say in like interviews where they're like so deep into it that after the scene that they have to just, when they're done for the day, they just have to go somewhere and sit forever, and have no one talk to them or anything.
I had a moment. It was weird, and I'm hoping I'm getting better as I get older. But I had a moment where I was shooting The Perfect House, and this young, 16-year-old actress came up to me right after I'd done this really intense scene and was asking me acting advice and stuff. And so I had to switch gears, and I said, maybe I'm maturing, because I did.
Yeah.
Even though I was like, contemplating tearing her head off, among other things. It was awesome, but it was also, again, that's everything in my life is an acting exercise.
Yeah.
All that way.
You did a really good job in this movie. Actually, I didn't recognize you at first.
Tim and I did that on purpose, kind of, I think.
I kind of figured that.
Like black hair and the flannel shirts, and
yeah, we talked about it. It was different. It was the opposite wardrobe, like what you played in Perfect House. Yeah, hair slicked back. I agree. I agree, man. And then it kind of clicks, and it may have clicked for you, Wolfie. And you're like, oh yeah, that's JT. Yeah.
It's uncomfortable in
Yeah,
general.
and compliment to the character transition, that you've
You know what
shifted.
it made me feel, Jimmy, so that these guys know? It
Yeah.
made me feel the same level of discomfort that I felt in high school.
Oh, interesting.
Because I was like, I'd never wear this shirt. And I was,
Right.
I bet I look terrible on camera with this shirt, and stuff like that goes through your mind. You can't help it, right? But it made me feel like, well, I'm definitely not going to be the sex symbol in this film.
No, not at all. And
And
that's
that's
cool, man.
cool.
Yeah, I mean, it helped bring out your performance, and of course, it was an '80s wardrobe kind of choice. Flannel shirts. I mean, they've never gone out of style, but they were definitely big back then.
See my high school yearbook.
Yeah, right.
He just went back to his closet.
Right. And speaking of flannel, what had happened is, I had to fly JT back out because when we shot the scene where he's picking out the videos with his girlfriend at the time in the video store, and when we first shot it, he was wearing a different colored flannel. He was wearing his red flannel from one of his kill scenes, and it was a continuity we missed, but we needed to have him wearing his other colored flannel so that because it was a continuous shot, into them checking out at the register with Tiffany. So I remember after that I was like, shit, we got to reshoot this because you're wearing two different flannels, and if I would have kept it, you would have been wearing your red flannel, and then as the scene continued, we would have seen you the huge glaring continuity of you in the tan, the other flannel that you were wearing. So that was interesting. We had to reshoot your shots of
But
that,
then we
just yours,
decided to do a whole bunch of extra stuff.
and then we got some extra stuff, which was nice. But it's funny that no matter how much you eye details on a set, there's sometimes little things that slip through continuity wise. I'm glad we caught that and fixed it because I didn't want to have to cut half of that scene. That would have sucked. Yeah.
I figured Johnathan would just call you up and say, "Guess what? There's a continuity error." I went through all the video boxes.
He knew better than to show me the dailies.
Like, yeah, if he had just thought now, like today, the film releasing and he watches it, he'd be like, "You got to pull it, man. We got to fix this and reshoot it."
No,
I mean, I wouldn't have let it slip. But if something like that would have slipped through, JT,
just like mixing music, you gotta let it
made it right.
Right? It's
That's
just
funny.
like when I'm mixing music, Jimmy. You gotta, at some point, you gotta let it go.
Oh yeah, exactly, man. That's how the editing was.
Nothing's gonna be perfect.
It turned in, and I'm like, it's good. I'm gonna turn it in now.
So how long did it take to make this movie?
Absolutely. So 2.5 years. We
Oh
started. Yeah, we started in October of 2015, and we shot with Lynn Lowry with the by proxy segment, and then we sold the film at AFM in November of 2017. And even at that point, it was it was getting there, but it still needed some more polishing. And so between that time, from November 2017 to about May of 2018, was the polishing of the film and getting it ready to turn in. And it was already overdue to the distributor, so I was definitely under the gun to get it turned in. But I didn't want to turn it in a really rough state, So I gave it the love that it needed to make it market ready. There's still some things I would have done if I had more time. I would have definitely made it a little bit shorter and made some more trims and things like that. But part of that's just that director editor curse. It's some things you're attached to, or you start overthinking it. Will the audience still get it if I take this bit out? And it turns out they totally would have got it if you just would have taken it out. So you overthink a lot of things, and then you keep something that could have gone. But I mean, that's been the main complaint about the film in general is the runtime. And to me, I'm like, if that's really the main thing people are complaining about, it could be worse. I'm glad they're not complaining about the performance, the stories, and things like that. But yeah.
It comes in at what, 2 hours, 2 hours and a minute. I mean, that's for a horror movie. That is a little long. As horror fans, we all have our, we're very used to like an hour and 39 minutes, hour and 40 minutes. But, you got three stories there, and they've got a lot of meat on them, so why not let it run the 2 hours?
Well, yeah, and that was definitely tugging at me too, And I mean, our film is not as good as Creepshow. I'll be honest. Creepshow is the best of them, but Creepshow was 2 hours, and it was anthology. Two Evil Eyes was another anthology that was 2 hours. So this format, it's not odd for this kind of. I guess what I'm saying is I feel you can get away with it more with an anthology because you are telling different stories and things like that. With this kind of runtime,
the irony
to your slasher, which would be like an hour and 30, would be ideal.
The irony is that most directors are trying to figure out a way to make films longer because they don't have enough material.
Yeah,
a buddy of mine he had to shoot a little bit more footage to fill out his film, and I've never seen to have that issue. I get in fact, it's on 3 hours. The initial rough cut was close to 3 hours, and I had always wanted down to an hour and a half. But as you can imagine, and being under the gun, trying to cut a 3 hour film down to an hour and a half was quite daunting. So I got to a point where I was like, I'm proud of where this is at, and I'm happy to turn it in. It's just unfortunate that a lot of people have picked up on the runtime being a hair too long for it, and it's understandable.
Yeah, I think it's a good film. I'm glad you guys finally got the 2.5 years later. Glad to see you guys finally got it put out.
Yeah, that's about average, by the way.
Well, I got stories to tell you, but
it's not an easy process. That's what he did is such a Herculean effort.
I do see that we need to get ready to get set up for the live show. So I want to thank you guys for coming on.
Thank you.
And if anyone is trying to find you guys on the internet and when they want to follow you, where can they follow you? Let's start with you, Jimmy.
Yeah, absolutely. So Facebook, just type in Jimmy Lee Combs, and you'll find me on Facebook. Send me a friend request. www.heartandfireproductions.com, www.terrortellsmovie.com, and you can also find me on Instagram, with under those names, Jimmy Lee Combs and Terror Tells. Twitter, same with that. So yeah, check us out on our websites and our social media.
And Johnathan, what about you?
The easiest thing for me is always is Facebook. Both just search or just Google Johnanthan Teirsten, and then secondarily Johnanthan Teirsten and the Spitting Image, which is my new band. And there's also the Edward Brothers, which is a new project I'm working on, and so I'm always working on music. I can't wait to work on more film, but so I'm always working on something. So I'm easy to find on the internet.
Hear that, everyone? He's easy. No.
I am. My wife says that. My new wife. And she's right.
Again, guys, thank you.
I gotta go teach tennis, guys. You guys have a great night. Jimmy, great to see you as always.
Thank you for coming on.
Oh, you
Take
bet.
care.
You bet.
So for Johnanthan Teirsten and Jimmy Lee Combs, I'm the 13th Wolfman, and I'm on the prowl.
Yeah. Let it slip. It's okay. Got it.